Welcome to another one of my Mix and Match series. This time it's again nonfiction, and we are looking at feminist literature. Now, the moment that I decided that I was going to do this series of videos, I knew that I wanted the last one to be about women. Every year we hear about how women writers are often neglected, whether it's in the public discourse or when it comes to awards, and men apparently find it very difficult to read women writers, which is so odd to me. What do you think we write about? To the point where I have noticed that on one of those reading challenges, and not just one, on multiple reading challenges, like one of the prompts is literally read a book by a woman. Who are you reading if you're not reading women? Women are literally the backbone of the publishing industry, so I really don't get it. Rants aside, these are some of my favorite books, and I chose them because they speak to the current discourse, not just about women, but about gender relations, So they're talking about how we relate to men, how men relate to women, and how are we all getting along. My first recommendation is Too Fat, Too Slutty, Too Loud by HELEN. Now, some of you might have heard of Petersen for the first time when she wrote this amazing article about Armie Hammer, the actor, and about how he's been trying to happen, or rather how Hollywood has been trying to make him happen for about 10 years now, and nothing quite sticks. And how amazing it is that white cis-het men always get these extra chances. That article kind of became this giant social media firestorm, and Hammer himself responded to it, and a lot of people called her mean-spirited for it. But was she wrong though? When was the last time any of you was like, oh my god, an Armie Hammer movie? Never. The answer is never. I personally started reading Petersen back in the good old days of The Toast, which is this website. The Toast, for a lot of us, was our happy place on the internet, and I realized it was a great deal of work and it eventually couldn't sustain itself. But Petersen started writing for The Toast about classic scandals of Hollywood. And for a while there, we just got to read these amazing, amazing essays about not just the scandals, but about celebrity culture in the United States back in the golden days of Hollywood. In fact, it was so popular and it was so successful that she eventually got a book deal out of it, and I bought that book. It's great. So what I'm trying to say is that HELEN is somebody who understands celebrity culture. She studies it and she writes about it, and she's been doing it for a very long time. Too Fat, Too Slutty, Too Loud is basically about how celebrity culture treats women. Now, this book came out a few years ago, so some of the references in it are dated, and I don't know if she's updated the book. Although, to be honest, I don't think she does need to update it because she's talking about something that happened in the moment. So, for example, she talks about Serena Williams and how she's too strong, and how celebrity culture and the people who write about celebrity culture react to the fact that she is a strong woman, physically and mentally. So each of the chapters in the book is basically using one woman as a case study, and then it kind of examines how celebrity culture treats that woman for that particular trait. For example, if you're talking about Kim Kardashian and her pregnancy body, and about how there's an expectation of what the pregnancy body looks like and how it should behave in public, these are not themes that have gone away magically. These are recurring themes in culture, whether it's in America or the UK or in India. And I think you'll see a lot of resonance with your own culture wherever you might be. I should also point out that she is really just looking at it through the lens of just one issue. So if you are expecting her to talk about all the different facets of those women, that's not what she's interested in, and that's not what this book is about. So don't get upset. This book is really for people who are interested in celebrity culture, and let's face it, like, who isn't? The next book on my list is Hood Feminism by Mikki Kendall. I don't know if you follow her on Twitter, but if you're on Twitter, you should absolutely follow her because she is one of the brightest voices that speaks to this moment. This book is basically about intersectionality. It's about how feminism in the United States is so overwhelmingly white, and it centers white experiences and how those experiences are obviously not universal, especially for Black women, because they stand at the intersection of race and gender. This is something that came to my attention quite a few years ago. I was reading an article about why sugar baby romances were so popular amongst African American women, and one of the points that they made is that the Black woman in the United States is so used to work, and her body has been put to work for breeding purposes as well as for labor, that for a Black woman, the idea of somebody being invested in her and finding her attractive enough to sort of wrap her up in cotton wool and take care of her is amazingly attractive. And I remember reading that article, and it was like a window had opened in my consciousness. This particular book is like that. On every single page, you are bound to find something that makes you go, oh my God, I never thought of it that way. The point of the book is not to get you to agree to everything. The point of the book is to make you think. This is a book that was incredibly celebrated the moment it came out, and I'm sure you'll find a bunch of different videos out there that have reviewed it much better than I can. So all I can say is that you should read it. Next up on my list is Invisible Women by CRIADO-PEREZ. There are some books that I remember so vividly when they came out because everybody on my timeline was talking about it. Hood Feminism was one of those books, and this was another. This is not really a book about misogyny that is conscious misogyny. It's rather about unconscious misogyny and about bias in everyday walks of life. A very long time ago, there was a study that was published, and it asked the question, why are corporate offices often really cold? And a lot of women wanted to know why too, because it was freezing in there. In my own experience, every single office that I've been in, all the women have been bundled up. And the reason it turns out is because the temperatures are set for men who wear suits. This book is basically about a million other examples about things like that. Things that affect how women work, how women are treated medically, that pertains to their safety in very common things. I've heard some people complain that there's like too many numbers and too many statistics in this book, and I'm going to guess that those people are all men, because anytime that you have had this conversation as a woman with a man who is hell-bent on proving that there's no bias whatsoever, it always devolves into statistics. So if you're one of those people that likes to have a good argument and you like to have an argument about misogyny, then this is an excellent book to have, because you can just whip it out and start reading out all the numbers in the world. I'm serious. All the numbers. That said, I was a little bit hesitant about recommending this book to you because I didn't know this at the time that it came out, because I actually pre-ordered it as soon as I heard about it. But later on, I discovered that CRIADO-PEREZ is actually a TERF, and trans rights are human rights. So if you don't want your money to go to somebody who's a TERF, then I've put in a link to an article that she wrote for The Guardian. I think it's an excerpt from her book, so you can just read that and be like, oh. The next book is Men Explain Things to Me by Rebecca Solnit. Now this is perhaps the most famous of all the books that I have recommended in this video. It was originally an essay that she wrote, I think more than 10 years ago, and sadly it's still relevant. So the first essay, which is Men Explain Things to Me, starts off with her being at a party with a very rich, very successful white man who keeps her after the party to explain her area of expertise to her, and ends up recommending that she read her own book. It's one of those classic, oh my God, it actually happened moments. But as funny as that is, the rest of the book is actually a little bit darker. It talks about the very real consequences of misogyny upon women around the world. And what it does is basically call out men for not wanting to encourage or engage in discussions about things that affect half of humanity. And part of that reason is that there's literally very little shame, even today, in mansplaining. You would think otherwise because, it's become such a part of the popular lexicon to mansplain something, and you'd think like men would be a little bit more ashamed about it, but not really. The last book in this series is called Cyber Sexy, and it's by RICHA called PADTE. I hope I'm saying her name right. I don't know why this book isn't more popular than it is. I mean, it has an excellent rating on GOODREADS, but I feel like it ought to be much more discussed. And what it talks about is porn and how it plays out in India. And reading this book, I've had this conversation before with my friends with whom I co-host the Khandan podcast. You should check it out, by the way. Which is that in Indian culture, we grew up pretty free range and just watching whatever it is that we wanted to watch. Like, we were never told, oh, this particular film is too old for you or too violent for you. We watched all kinds of graphic action scenes. We saw people get their body parts blown off. We saw genocide and rape and terrorist attacks. And none of our parents really had much to say about it, but the moment we had moments of consensual sex or even romance, so much as two people kissing but by consent, immediately it was this. So what happens when you have a population that has been very determinedly kept away from consensual forms of sexual desire, but are also interested in sexuality, as are, most people? And India is also a place where, we consume a lot of porn. You can look up the statistics anywhere you like. So all of this sort of comes together in a toxic brew. So Richa writes about what it's like to be young and to have online access in this culture, and how it's changed the lives of so many people, especially because sexual identities are changing and becoming more accepted. A lot of this book is actually about the history of porn and current trends in India and things like that. But its central thesis, for me at least, was about removing moral judgment and centering the concept of consent instead. And that really is incredibly important in a country like India with so much gender violence, gender sexual violence. I hope you've enjoyed this series, and I hope to come back soon with season 2 with more series recommendations. But until then, please hit the subscribe button and keep an eye out for more videos. For more videos, please hit the subscribe button.